Yeah. Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we running the game. I'm a headliner.
What is going on, Headliner Nation? Jake, Fantasy Headliners. Hopefully everybody's doing well out there today for Week 8 Fantasy Football. We're talking about some running backs that we're going to start and sit here this week. And luckily, I don't know about you all, but I am just glad Week 7 is over. The Bipocalypse is over. All the injuries we had to deal with. And we can finally move on from that because it was no fun whatsoever. But you know what? We actually did pretty good. So let's take a look at our accuracy percentage here for Week 7. And all things considered, wasn't a bad week at all. Out of the 51 running backs that we gave a start or sit designation to, we got 37 of them correct for an accuracy percentage of 73%. Some of the biggest misses, Mike Davis, A.J. Dillon, Darrell Henderson, all somewhat disappeared in Week 7. The bigger hits, though, Damian Harris had himself a ball game. Javonte Williams of the Denver Broncos, he found the end zone. And Michael Carter continues to be a safe, reliable flex play on a weekly basis. So overall, not too bad here for Week 7. I want to try to see what we can do here for Week 8. A lot to cover, and we're going to go through every matchup. Before we do, though, just a quick reminder about our October giveaway. And it's probably going to be the last week that we mention it because October is almost over, which is absolutely crazy to think about. But don't forget about our bundle giveaway: a signed CMC jersey, a mystery pylon, a Manscaped Perfect Package 4.0 box, and a $50 Fanatics gift card. How do you enter? All you do, head over to prizepicks.com or download the app. Create a new account, use the referral code Headliners, and make that initial $20 deposit. Heck, we'll match your deposit all the way up to $100, and then you're entered into this giveaway. Looking forward to announcing that winner here end of the month, but now Week 8 is here. We have a ton of matchups to talk about, and we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to kick it off right here, Thursday Night Football, with the matchup between the Green Bay Packers and Arizona Cardinals. And really the story here has been all around the pass catchers of the Green Bay Packers, right? No Davante Adams, no Allen Lazard. What does that mean for this week? It's a short week. It's a Thursday night game. It means we're about to see a butt ton of Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. As of right now, he's seen right around 4 to 6 targets per game. With the missing weapons that they have there for Green Bay, I expect that number to climb this week, which we love from a fantasy football perspective. It's crucial, though, too, because Arizona, they're pretty solid against the run. They allow only 13 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs, which is second best in the NFL. But Green Bay, they're going to need some playmakers. What about A.J. Dillon? What the hell happened to A.J. Dillon in Week 7? Dude went backwards. Now, do I think he sucks? No, obviously not. He had himself a bad game. But with those inconsistencies, even though we may see added touches in this backfield, I expect him to go the way of Aaron Jones early in this ball game, and I'm not willing to risk it just yet here this week with A.J. Dillon. As for the Arizona Cardinals, James Conner continues to streak here a little bit, right? He's had 6 touchdowns over his last 5 games played. We've also seen Chase Edmonds, though, just last week, look a lot healthier, something we hadn't seen in a few weeks. Last week, he saw 16 touches in Week 7. That's the most he's had since Week 3. But the concerning part with Chase Edmonds, dude can't find the end zone, right? I mean, he out there just looking for it, and he can't find it here in 2021. No touchdowns on the season. The Packers allow right around 17 fantasy points per game. And honestly, this Arizona offense is one of the best in the NFL and is going to provide scoring opportunities for their running backs. In my opinion, both of these guys this week are flex options. Even though Green Bay is going to be without a lot of their top playmakers, Arizona wants to go out and make a statement. A lot of people see the undefeated 7-0 Arizona Cardinals, but really aren't giving them much credit. The Cardinals want the credit, and whether it's beating Green Bay with or without Davante Adams, they're going to be going as hard as they can to get that victory here this week. Both these guys are going to be starts, but they're not going to be ranked super high because I do expect a split in touches. So yeah, they'll be inside the top 24 most likely, but not some super high ranking for either one of these guys. All right, so now we're going to hip thrust it over to Sunday football, and a lot of people looking forward to a lot of games this weekend. Is one of them the Carolina Panthers and Atlanta Falcons? Probably not a whole lot, right? I mean, Carolina has been playing horrible the last couple of weeks. Atlanta starting to finally find their stride somewhat on offense, but it's the Carolina offense that is severely struggling. They've now lost 4 straight games, and the defense just looks average all of a sudden. This defense was elite the first few weeks of the season, and now they're just getting beat on all levels of the field. They've allowed 21 plus points now in 4 straight games. which is allowing Chuba Hubbard in the running game to not get going because they're always playing from behind, having to force the ball down the field, leading to more interceptions and mistakes from Sam Darnold. Now, as of right now, the Falcons allowing right around 17 fantasy points per game. And Chuba, he's getting his touches. He's had at least 16 of them over the past few weeks, but the ceiling is just super low because the scoring opportunities aren't there. We've also seen his yards per carry decrease now for 5 straight weeks. That's somewhat concerning, but the volume is still there, and it's going to keep him as a weekly start, maybe more as a flex play, which a lot of people I realize can't have that luxury because they just don't have the running back depth, but he's still going to be a start for us here this week. For the Atlanta Falcons, this is a Mike Davis revenge game. Doubtful. I mean, the guy was barely even part of the game plan last week. He only had 4 touches last week. 4. I mean, why did they all of a sudden abandon Mike Davis? The game was pretty close, but Cordarrelle Patterson dominated the touches and the carries on the ground where he had 14 of them. Now, back-to-back games for Cordarrelle Patterson with at least 14 carries and 5+ targets. That's the guy that we want in this backfield as of right now. Atlanta really seems to have found a way to utilize Cordarrelle Patterson on a weekly basis. Now, I've mentioned this for a few weeks that at some point, he's going to come crashing back down to earth, and we want to make sure we sell high before that happens. Do we want to do it just yet? Not with them not utilizing Mike Davis, because if Mike Davis isn't taking away touches, we may be able to ride Patterson for more weeks than we had originally thought. We're paying close attention to it, though, because the Carolina Panthers allow right around 15 fantasy points per game. In my opinion, the running back to start in this backfield, still Cordarrelle Patterson. Up to Buffalo now for the Bills and the Dolphins, and it's crazy, right? I mean, just think about this for a second. Is it odd to anyone else that when Myles Gaskin gets touches, he produces? It's kind of crazy. I mean, he's definitely going over Brian Flores' head at times, but it's just crazy because just this past week, we saw him get the volume, a season high in carries, which then in turn led to a season high in rushing yards. Plus, he caught all 4 of his targets once again. He now has 3 touchdowns over the last 3 games, and they're all through the air, which is something to note here. Kind of jot that down for a second. We're going to come back to that here in just a second, but this dude is a big play waiting to happen. How about a crazy stat? Right now, he's running back 40 overall in the NFL in carries. However, he's running back 7 overall when it comes to breakaway runs, which are runs over 15 yards. Not getting the carries, but when he is, he's doing something with them. That's what we want, and that's why we liked Myles Gaskin coming into the season. Brian Flores just needs to like him a little bit more, but let me make sure I set something straight. This is not an easy matchup for him going up against the Buffalo Bills. They allow only 14 fantasy points per game, and I expect the Dolphins to be trailing in this ball game. When they trail, they have to throw the ball. As of right now, who's the best running back they have out of the backfield to catch passes? It's Myles Gaskin. For that reason, he's going back into the start column here this week because I anticipate them playing from behind. As for Buffalo, it's just not good, right? It's not something where you're like, yeah, I'm going to start Devin Singletary, or yeah, I'm going to start Zach Moss. Like, there aren't people out there saying that anywhere. And if they are, they probably shouldn't be playing fantasy football because they're a little bit, what I'm talking about. But anyway, moving forward, Josh Allen is really the running back 1 on this team. Let's not confuse that. He is the guy. He is what moves the ball on the ground. But this matchup is great. Miami allows 25 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. That's 4th most in the NFL. But neither Singletary or Moss have found the end zone or scored over 10 fantasy points since week 4. If I had to take a stab on this game, kind of like I just mentioned with Myles Gaskin, I expect Buffalo to get a lead in this ballgame. If they can get that lead, maybe we see a few garbage points there down the stretch in the 4th quarter where they're running the clock with Devin Singletary. Usually I prefer Zach Moss in a game in which they're going to be throwing a lot. They may in the first half, but Zach Moss kind of found himself in the doghouse, didn't have the greatest game before the bye week. So as of right now, I don't want to start either of these guys, but if I had to take a stab on somebody here for this week, if I really needed somebody, it's Devin Singletary, which takes us now over to Chicago for the Bears and the 49ers. And Chicago may have some tough decisions here pretty soon. Now, a lot of people want to know about David Montgomery. He's eligible to return this week, and it would not surprise me if we see him make an appearance at practice. However, until I hear from the doc as of right now, it sounds like he's still a week or 2 shy from being put back into the lineup. And honestly, that's kind of what I expect them to do. The way that Khalil Herbert is playing right now, why do they need to rush David Montgomery back? It doesn't make much sense. Now, Herbert shouldn't be surprising any of you. If you've watched this channel for any amount of time, you know how much we like this kid. Plus, we covered him all offseason over on Headliner U, our college football channel. We've been talking about this guy for months. Now, all of a sudden, he's producing. Everybody's like, where did this guy come from? Dude can play. Dude is definitely somebody who can put up some numbers here in the NFL. He's now coming off back-to-back games with over 100 total yards in each of them. He's averaging 5 yards per carry, and then just last week, showed a little bit of that pass-catching upside, had 5 receptions. Now, San Francisco, pretty solid against the run, allowing only 13 fantasy points per game. But so was Tampa Bay last week, and Khalil Herbert had no issues finding room there on the ground to move. Now, this could be a mess when David Montgomery comes back, but until then, we're riding the hot wave of one Khalil Herbert. As for Damian Williams, I think he's really kind of fallen behind the 8 ball, I guess you could say a little bit. I know he missed a game there being on the COVID list, and then all of a sudden Khalil Herbert is just producing, and they're giving the kid the opportunity. Damian Williams is still going to come in at times, but I think he's lost that bulk of the volume that he had prior to his COVID placement. So this is definitely something to pay attention to here in the coming weeks, but as of right now, I'm staring directly at Khalil Herbert. As for San Francisco, it's Elijah Mitchell, and he looked fan-damn-tastic last week. Caught me by surprise just a little bit. Last week, 18 carries, 107 yards, and 1 touchdown on the ground. No Trey Sermon, JaMychal Hasty's barely being used. It's really Elijah Mitchell, the only one being used in this backfield as of right now, which is perfect because that's what we're looking for. Chicago allows right around 18.5 fantasy points per game, and whoever is in this backfield just needs touches to produce. Honestly, it's kind of plug and play. It doesn't matter who's back there. It's whoever's going to get the volume. And for the longest time, they're splitting carries between 2, 3 running backs in this backfield and making it a nightmare. If they want to commit to just one guy, and if that one guy is Elijah Mitchell, he could put up some super solid numbers in this backfield. It's just the way the offense is run. So as of right now, with him looking like the lead back in San Francisco, he finds himself in the start column. Now we head over to Cleveland for the Browns and the Steelers, another interdivisional matchup, and we get our chubby back. Hell yeah, we get our chubby back this week. Sounds like we're getting our chubby back for the Cleveland Browns. He's back at practice, but what's even better, also offensive lineman Jack Conklin back at practice, which is one of the key members of this offensive line, which greatly helps. Plus, we know there's no Kareem Hunt now in this backfield. Does Dearness Johnson still see some touches? Of course he does. Does Demetric Felton get involved in some passing downs? Sure, of course he does. But we know the Cleveland Browns are going to run the ball, and they're going to run the ball a lot. Baker Mayfield still, if you're not how long, he will be out. Does that mean we see more reliancy on the running game? Maybe even more pass-catching work going the way of Nick Chubb? Hey, at this point, we'll take anything we can get in the passing game, right? It's all, cherry on top. It's all gravy for us, so we definitely will take that. A matchup going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They are right around 16 fantasy points per game. Shouldn't be much of a question. The only back I'm starting here this week in Cleveland, as of right now, is Nick Chubb. For the Steelers, it's great to have Najee back as well, right? We didn't have him last week. He was on his bye. So he should be back. He should be rested. And we know there's no Juju Smith-Schuster in this offense for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Does that mean even more passing work going the way of Najee Harris? I don't think so. Not a whole. I mean, he's already getting a ton of touches. He's had at least 21 touches now in 4 straight games played. Going against the Browns, they allow right around 14 fantasy points per game. No question here. You obviously start Najee Harris on a weekly basis. Over to Detroit now for the Lions and Eagles, and I guess we're just going to make it easy for Nick Sirianni since he can't figure it out for Philadelphia. With no Miles Sanders in the lineup, we really can't be disappointed in whether or not we should start him or not, right? So now we move forward and we look at Kenneth Gainwell, we look at Boston Scott. What is this split going to look like? A little bit more 50-50, kind of what we saw last week after Sanders went down. But they didn't commit to Miles Sanders. What makes us think they're going to commit to one of these guys moving forward? More than likely, they're going to split touches here once again. But this is a matchup in which we want to start somebody, right? Going up against the Detroit Lions, who allow 22 fantasy points per game, 6th most in the NFL. We have to find somebody in this matchup to play if needed. Now, we've seen Boston Scott perform in this offense before, at least with the Philadelphia Eagles. It doesn't mean that he's going to get it once again, though. This is an offense that drafted Kenneth Gainwell. They liked him in the draft. They want to utilize him more, and he is the more explosive running back. Plus, he's got that PPR upside, that pass-catching upside. So for this week, the guy I'm going with is Kenneth Gainwell. For Detroit, I'm just glad, right? A few weeks ago, I sat here and made direct eye contact into the camera. I spoke to Dan Campbell's soul of the Detroit Lions, and it sunk in. And I'm glad that it's working out for everybody because DeAndre Swift owners are definitely benefiting right now. Since that talk, 17 plus touches a game, 3 touchdowns, 19 receptions, and he's playing over 70% of his snaps. As of right now, this kid is just making big plays everywhere. Number 2 in the NFL among all running backs in yards created with 531. Also, among all running backs, currently number 1 in targets, number 8 in red zone touches, number 1 in receiving yards, and number 1 in receptions. The Philadelphia Eagles allow 23 fantasy points per game. We're definitely starting DeAndre Swift here this week. As for Jamal Williams, his snap percentage still hovering right around 30%. Not getting enough volume on a weekly basis on a team that more than likely trails majority of the time to where he's start worthy as of right now. So for Jamal Williams, he's going to remain a sit. We're going to continue to roll with DeAndre Swift. Which takes us over to Indianapolis and Tennessee for the Colts and the Titans, my Manscaped matchup of the week. That's right. As soon as this video is over, head over to manscaped.com. They got some new products coming out here for the holiday season that you do not want to miss out on. Use the promo code Headliners at checkout. We're going to get you 20% off and free shipping. Head over there as soon as this video is over. But come on. This is a matchup of running back 1 versus running back 2 in fantasy football. You got Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor. You just can't say enough about these guys. I mean, we're looking at 2 running backs who potentially have the opportunity to eclipse 2,000 total yards on the season. I shouldn't have to tell you to start these guys. And plus, this is a rematch of week 3. We just saw this week 3 in fantasy football. Derrick Henry getting the better of Jonathan Taylor. He had 28 carries for 113 yards plus 3 receptions for 31. Taylor ended with only 10 carries for 64 yards, 1 reception for 8 yards. And Derrick Henry's team ended up winning the game there, the Titans 25-16. I expect it to be a little bit closer though when it comes to statistical achievements in this game. I'm actually heading over to Prize Picks right now. I'm pulling up Jonathan Taylor and I'm going to smash the over because right now it's set at 79.5 rushing yards, a number that he's gotten easily here the past couple weeks. Love that for Jonathan Taylor, and definitely going to be a fun game for us all to watch here this weekend. Now we head over to the Big Apple, the Jets and the Bengals. And is it crazy that we've actually gotten to a point in our NFL lives where the Cincinnati Bengals can afford to run some of their backups out there at the end of games to, make sure they save and rest their starters some because the leads are so big. The Bengals out there balling right now, and they're not having to use their starters for all 4 quarters, which kind of sucks for Joe Mixon owners because Samaje Perine getting some of those garbage points there end of the week. But is that going to happen every single week? No, probably not. This week, though, yeah, it's probably going to happen again because they're going up against the Jets, who allow 28 fantasy points per game, the most in the NFL to opposing running backs. Plus, we know they don't have Zach Wilson on offense. The Cincy offense is just clicking on all cylinders right now. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they're like a thing, right? It's definitely working out between those two. So actually, I don't mind either one of these guys this week. I think Joe Mixon sees the bulk of the work early in the game, finds the end zone, and then down the stretch, Samaje Perine is somebody who can get those garbage points. Now, I'm going to preface this. Just because Samaje Perine is in the start column does not mean that you start him over some bigger name guys. He's going to be lower in the rankings, but with a couple bye weeks, if you're looking for somebody to fill in, if you're dealing with injuries, it's a shot in the dark. Maybe you start multiple flexes and you're just trying to fill a roster at this point. Samaje Perine is a guy who has a decent floor this week in which he could see some added touches in a game in which they're winning. For the Jets, we're only sticking with Michael Carter here. His snap percentage has increased each of the last 4 games. Plus, he's coming off a game in which he's had a season high in targets with 9. A game in which they're going to be trailing, a quarterback under center, not Zach Wilson, more checkdowns going the way of Michael Carter, whatever scoring opportunities are there on the goal line going the way of Michael Carter. He's going to be a solid floor play. The ceiling, not too high. It'll be a decent flex play for people here in week 8, not somebody super high in the rankings, but is in the start column. Now we go down to Houston for the Texans and the Rams, and Darrell Henderson disappointed last week in a matchup against the Lions, right? We expected him to smash that start. Not so much. 18 touches, which isn't bad, but only had 7 fantasy points on the day, depending on your scoring. Are we looking for a bounce back this week versus the Houston Texans? It's the perfect opportunity. And you know what? I'm showing some faith in Hendo. I'm heading over to Prize Picks and I'm smashing the over again this week on 79.5 rushing yards. The Houston Texans allow 22 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. He's dominating the touches. He's getting 88% of the snaps. No way you can sit him at this point of the season. He's going to remain a start. As for Sony Michel, dude's only playing like 12% of the snaps, not getting anywhere near enough volume to be start worthy, so he's still sitting firmly in the sit column. Now for Houston, they're trying to make David Johnson like a thing, right? They're throwing him the ball a lot, and whether Tyrod Taylor comes back or not, it doesn't matter. There's not enough scoring opportunities in this offense on a weekly basis in a difficult matchup this week going up against the Rams. Now it's easier to run on LA than it is to throw on LA, But it's not easy for Houston to run on anyone. So until they figure out this backfield, until they're more consistent, honestly, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. All these guys find their way in the sit column. Now we head out to SoCal for the Chargers and the Patriots, and the New England Patriots just put up 54 points. Sure, I get it. It was against the Jets, but still, 54 points. That's tough to do, especially for this offense. And Damian Harris is just out there just flinging it everywhere and just smashing it anywhere he wants to go at this point. Back-to-back games now with 100 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns now in his last 3 games, all playing with less than 50% snaps. So think about that. His efficiency really getting a boost here the last couple weeks as he's not playing massive snap numbers. And that's because they're playing Brandon Bolden and J.J. Taylor as well. Both these guys also had 15-plus fantasy points just this past week. Now, Bolden, a little bit more of that PPR upside. J.J. Taylor find himself in a great situation where he could find the end zone a couple times this past week, but does that happen every single week? I can't count on that, but I really believe this offense kind of found a new identity moving forward. They're just going to utilize all their pass-catching running backs and pound the ball between the tackles with Damian Harris. The Chargers allow right around 27 fantasy points per game, second most in the NFL. Harris, you're for sure starting. If you need another option, though, Brandon Bolden isn't bad. Now, he's not somebody who's going to be super high in the rankings, but he does have that PPR upside if you're in a PPR scoring league. So he's definitely a name to pay attention to. As for LA, you know you're going to start Austin Eckler. The dude has 7 touchdowns through 6 games, huge weekly upside. Definitely go out there and get 10 targets on any given week. He can go out there and get 15 to 20 rush attempts any given week. He's somebody with a huge ceiling that's highly utilized in this offense. You for sure start Austin Eckler. Up the coast now to Seattle for the Jags and the Seahawks, and it's good to have James Robinson now back off of his bye week because the dude was just straight dominating before his bye week. In case you've forgotten, he'd had 4 straight games with a touchdown and 4 straight games with at least 18 touches. Now a matchup going up against Seattle, who allows 25 fantasy points per game, 3rd most in the NFL. James Robinson firmly finds himself right back where he left off in the start column there for Jacksonville. For Seattle, I guess as of right now, it's still about Alex Collins. He showed he was healthy enough to go out there and really shoulder the load this past week. Unfortunately, dude averaged like 2 yards per carry and was highly, highly inefficient. But this week, this matchup is a lot better. The Jags allow just about 19 fantasy points per game. Collins seems like he's healthy enough to go out there and get the volume that we need for him to be a decent flex play here in week 8. Plus, Geno Smith, he's just bad, right? They need to limit the mistakes for Geno. How do you do that? Rely more on the running game, and Alex Collins, as of right now, he's going to find himself in the start column here for week 8. Now we head down to Denver for the Broncos and the Washington football team, and right back to the headache that is the Washington football team on a weekly basis. It's just so hard to sit Antonio Gibson, right? The dude just isn't 100% healthy yet. I totally get that, but the bye week is coming, right? Week 9 is their bye. Hopefully he can get the rest he needs and come back after the bye for a great schedule and really finish strong here this season. Now, a matchup this week going up against Denver. They're a middle-of-the-pack run defense, allowing right around 19 fantasy points per game. The problem is right now, Antonio Gibson only playing like 40% of the snaps, 60% of them going the way of J.D. McKissic right now. That's mostly because Washington finds himself playing from behind a lot. J.D. McKissic has 20 targets over his last 3 games, and honestly, I'd prefer to sit Antonio Gibson. Whether you can do that on your team, I don't know. You don't want to start somebody crazy. Like, I wouldn't start Zach Moss over Antonio Gibson, but he's not somebody who I'm excited to start as of right now until he can get healthier. They're both, in my opinion, flex plays at best, with the floor sitting right around 7 points a week. That is not sexy. That is not what you want. But if you get a goal line carry, all of a sudden that 60 yards rushing that maybe Antonio Gibson is going to get ends as a 12-point day with the touchdown and really kind of saves it as a flex play here on a weekly basis. The upside just severely capped as of right now. I have both of them listed as starts, but it just all depends on what you can afford to do with your team here this week. For Denver, you got Melvin Gordon, you got Javonte Williams, both safe weekly flex starts on a weekly basis. I mean, these guys are going out there and they're performing weekly. Plus, they're both find themselves right now inside the top 24 overall in fantasy football. They're splitting touches basically 50-50, and the Washington football team allows right around 19 fantasy points per game. Both of them have PPR upside. Both of them are finding the end zone occasionally. Like I said, a safe floor for these guys. They're hovering almost right around 10 fantasy points a week, which isn't bad. You know, given maybe you have somebody who's injured or on a bye week, they're a solid fill-in. Javonte Williams is slowly overtaking this backfield. It's going to probably take a few more weeks, but you can see how special this kid is at times on the field. The only running back in the NFL that has 3 carries of over 30 yards. Very explosive, and both these guys, once again, going to be a start. Now we get into a couple great matchups, easy ones for us to know whether we're starting or sitting. The first one being Tampa Bay and New Orleans. And how pleasant has the production of Leonard Fournette been, right? I mean, he's really helped a lot of fantasy teams that weren't counting on getting what they've gotten from him here so far. He now has touchdowns in 3 straight games, 4 straight games with at least 16 touches and at least 13 fantasy points. Now, New Orleans are a solid defense against the run, but this offense in Tampa Bay is way too good, and Fournette's getting too many opportunities to ever sit. The guy is just getting goal line carries on a weekly basis. Definitely someone who's going to remain in the start column. As for New Orleans, same thing with Alvin Kamara, right? Are you liking what you're getting from Alvin Kamara? Because the dude is he's just hogging in touches at this point. 20 plus carries in 4 of the last 6 games played. Plus, he's had 19 targets combined over his last 2 games. That's really giving him that safe floor and a high ceiling with all that volume. Jameis right now, checking it down. Jameis used to just continually fling it down the field in Tampa Bay, right? That's why he had so many interceptions. Now, at times, he's taking the short check down play to Alvin Kamara, and we're all reaping the rewards from it. So Kamara and Lenny, they're both starts here this week. Which takes us now over to Minnesota for the Cowboys and Vikings, which is Zeke versus Cook. I mean, Taylor, hey, can we do a double Manscaped matchup of the week? I know we already did one. Throw the graphic up again. Here we go. Another Manscaped matchup of the week to watch out for. Zeke Elliott, Dalvin Cook. Do you need to be told to start either one of these guys? I sure hope not, right? There are no doubters on a weekly basis, but both these teams allow over 19 fantasy points per game, which means they both have that opportunity to have a great game for you and your fantasy team here in Week 8. Which will take us down to Kansas City for the Chiefs and the Giants Monday Night Football. And I would love to sit here and talk into this microphone and look into this camera and say, hey, Saquon Barkley's coming back this week. But I honestly don't think it happens this week. We may see him at practice. He may come back and start to work his way back to game shape here, but I don't think it happens this week. We'll check with the doc on Friday, get an update on his injury. But for right now, we're going to focus on Devontae Booker because we know at least he's going to play in a great matchup going up against Kansas City, who allows right around 20 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. Plus, we know the Giants need help with weapons, right? It just seems like it's a revolving door in the injury tent, in the trainer's office, whatever it is. They can't stay healthy on offense in New York. They're going to need to utilize whoever's in that backfield. And right now, with it being Devontae Booker, he's the guy I'm looking at. He's going to remain a start for his PPR upside as well. For Kansas City, still no CEH either, right? And honestly, this offense is struggling. Is it crazy that Patrick Mahomes, I mean, he's just struggling this year compared to what we've seen in years past? Is the offense broken? I keep hearing that question. Have they been figured out by the NFL? And for a while, I'm like, no, they haven't. But as the weeks go on, it's apparent that something is just not working in Kansas City. But this game should still be a little bit closer than last week's, right, where they're getting torched by Tennessee to the point where they can utilize Darrell Williams a little bit more. He's the best option they have in this backfield. No, it's not Jerick McKinnon. Darrell Williams is going to get the bulk of the volume here, the scoring opportunities when they're there. New York allows over 22 fantasy points per game, so we're definitely going to fire up Darrell Williams here to end Week 8. All right, that's going to be all my starts and sits for the running back show here, Week 8 fantasy football. Hopefully I was able to give you a little bit of information. Don't forget, our rankings come out later in the week, and it's imperative to watch all the videos throughout the week. Things in the NFL, they change by the hour practically, and as things change, things get updated. Make sure you're following along all week long, ending it there Saturday night with our live stream at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Have a lot of fun communicating with the community there for a few hours on Saturday night. We love doing that. Looking forward to doing that. And also, don't forget to get in on the giveaway, right? October's almost over. That Prize Picks link is down below in the description. Get that bundle giveaway. Get entered for that bundle giveaway. Looking forward to giving that away here in just a couple days. But for right now, hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day, a great week. We'll talk to you later.